Hello and welcome to episode 374 of the 21st Century Work-Life podcast. My name is Pilar Orti and I am your host, and I'm recording on the 8th of October 2025. I had to think about the year for a second, which is just about a week after I released the last episode. I'm not sure if I will release this week or next week, but right now is a good moment to record the audio. So I am back. Thank you for listening. Thank you for being here. And thank you for everyone that was still subscribed to the podcast, because we did have quite a few listens. And that's probably because you were subscribed, because I didn't tell anyone. I didn't make a big announcement on LinkedIn or anything like that. I thought I'd wait and see what happened, and I am very pleased. So pleased also that I even heard from a listener Roberta, sorry, I don't know why I went so Italian. Roberta, who was also a guest on the show, and of course, who I've known for many years online. And I'll come back to her comments and her book recommendations after I have gone through today's book. So you might remember, if you were around for the last episode, that now I'm just taking a book that I've read, that I've enjoyed, that I made notes on, and I'm just sharing my notes with you, hence Booknotes. And that's all I'm doing. So I'd love to hear from you, Pilar at virtualnotdistant.com. And today's book is Because Internet: Understanding How Language is Changing by Gretchen McCulloch. This was a book recommended to me by my friend Judy Rees, when we were preparing a workshop together some years ago now. And I really, really enjoyed it. I was in the world of remote work, so really paying attention at how we communicate online. But this goes beyond that. And it's fascinating. I have lots of things to share with you, and some I will just tell you. So let's start. Let's start with, very simple. The most commonly used sets of emoji are the faces and hands, like the smile. Is that still the case? I think so. We use emoji less to describe the world around us and more to be fully ourselves in an online world. I don't think anyone is surprised by that reflection. Now, people tend to have a mental model of who they expect to read their posts, and feel that their trust is violated when someone outside that model does so. And I think this is referring probably to social media. I don't know if you've ever had this. I've definitely had this sometimes. Put up a post and thought, okay, this person, these kind of people will see it. And then you have someone from a completely different, network or whatever, who says something that takes you completely by surprise. And you're like, hang on, this was not supposed to land like that. And I have to say, I'm also guilty of maybe having provoked that reaction in posters at some point. But it's unavoidable, isn't it? And it's a little risk. So it makes me think that every time we post online in social media, even in the smallest of them, it's a risk. We're putting ourselves out there. So I don't do it as much as I used to. I have to say that even though I'm not as affected by how my posts land as I used to be, I'm also like, I'm not sure who wants to read this. Let's leave it. That's why I turned to podcasting, because if you're still listening, then you really want to stay listening. And then I'll go through this next set, which is all about, again, language. Talking in particular ways reinforces our networks, our sense of belonging and community. Every time we talk with some people more than others, we have the chance to develop a shared vocabulary. And then, people who follow each other on Twitter are likely to pick up words from each other. We're especially likely to pick up new words when we're first entering a community. And I have to say, as someone who's especially professionally jumped from one place to the other, I just pick up language. When I was an actor and we had certain kind of tutors, we picked up language like being in the moment. When you're acting, you have to be in the moment, just things like that. That's very simple. And sometimes that could be referred as technical language, but I think it's also part of that community. Then when I started teaching, again, I would hear other teachers speak in a certain way, and you start to adapt and evolve your language. Then as I went into the corporate training, or in fact, as I started to run a theatre company, then that got me with another set of people, the managers and the administrators. That was another type of language, or the business speak. And then, of course, in corporate, also in remote world, and more recently into the Pilates community. So I find it quite funny how you pick up, of course, a lot of cueing. When you're cueing an exercise, I've picked up a lot of language, like if you've ever done a Pilates class, like engaging a muscle. In a lot of fitness and movement training, we talk about engaging that muscle, but I don't think I used to talk about that before. And then how we cue, how we say, for example, yes, when you're doing this exercise, engage your abdominals, or navel to spine, which is super Pilates and a little bit controversial. And indeed, you start to, well, I suppose you start to see what the community does or what the profession does in a new way when you enter it. And so you start to acquire vocabulary to describe that new way of seeing things. I found the reflection very pertinent to where I am now. Anyway, and then just some anecdotes about the difference between genders. Men were more likely to write topic-based blogs, and women more likely to write diary-style blogs. Men overall tended to swear more, but techies, a cluster that was male-dominated, didn't swear much at all, presumably because they were using Twitter as an extension of the workplace. So this, of course, is talking about Twitter. I think there's also a good reflection of how the social media, especially now, the way social media is now, sometimes we are both professional and ourselves and personal. And of course, as we are in a lot of the business world, we are starting to encourage more of ourselves to come to work, and especially in social media to be more human. Then we start to see this, that our audience for our personal posts might well be also our audience for our work. And so we curate how we talk about things. Then it's talking about, I don't know where location-wise the thought comes from, but it talks about the Arabic language. And Arabic was comfortably settled in what linguists call a diglossia. When a society has two languages or dialects that almost everyone speaks, each of which serves a distinct social function. This, again, for me is very relevant because I'm now spending a lot of time in Valencia, in the region of Valencia in Spain. Half of my family is from Valencia. But they've always spoken Valencia, which is the dialect there, the language. But my family, my close family, never spoke a lot of Valencia, never made a point of speaking it. And my radar is very strong when I am in the Valencian community of who is speaking and when are people speaking Valencia and when they're not, because everyone is bilingual there. Most people, they speak perfect Castilian and perfect Valencia. They switch sometimes. I find it a lot with my Catalan friends. I have lots of voiceover colleagues who are Catalan, and they will just switch from one to the other. And personally, as an English and Spanish bilingual who studied and actually grew up in a British school in Spain, we had that bilingualism, but Spanish is what we talked socially and English is what we talked in the classroom. And we made that distinction. And even though we probably did it subconsciously, it was completely about each serving a distinct social function, really. So again, yeah, that resonated with me. And something else just as a curiosity, I recently renewed my ID in the Valencia community because I was there. I'm from Madrid, but I was there. So I got my ID, and my ID has both languages. It has Spanish, Castilian, and Valencia, where it says name, surname, and all of that. It's got both languages. Right. So if we go back a little bit for those of you who are my generation, Generation X, or a previous generation, I think this really will resonate. Your experience of the internet and the language therein is shaped by who you were and who else was around at the time you joined. And we completely see it in people whose main mode of online communication was emails, or before that, letters, still post in social media, and they will post it like it is a letter. regards and their name. When people who've just joined social media, when social media was just part of life, they've got a completely different way of engaging and of posting. So again, that was a good one. Then some more about the beginning of some of these platforms. When Facebook started, it was anomalous among social platforms for how it linked your online identity with your offline name and social networks. And what they're talking about here, of course, is that before, in forums, we could be whoever we wanted. Who we were online wasn't always obvious to who we were in person. For the internet users who joined in order to hang out with people they already knew, screen names were a way of performing identity rather than obscuring. Another interesting one of when we're thinking now of giving ourselves usernames that are not our real names. Before we wanted to be anonymous in forums, and now we just want to say, hey, I identify with this, or I think this is funny, and so I use it as my username. So again, really fascinating. All right, now for some vocabulary. So context collapse. I like that. This is Dana Boyd's term for when people from all your overlapping friend groups see all your shared posts from different aspects of your life. Context collapse. That's how I feel. Because, of course, not just to countries, but lots of different professions. That's my online world. When I post, people see the post regardless of where I've met them in my past life or what our common interests are. I really like that, the context collapse. And then there's another one, expressive lengthening. For example, nice. You would write, instead of N-I-C-E, you would write N-I-I-I-I-I-C-E, or lots of E's, so nice, that kind of thing. So I like that expressive lengthening. And apparently it's sensitive to social context. People lengthen more in private text or chat messages than in public posts. Makes sense. If we think about how we speak vocally rather than when we write, we do that, but we're more likely to be more expressive in a personal context than a professional one, maybe. I don't know, I had to think about that because seeing as I'm here behind the microphone is this professional? Is it personal? I don't know anymore. You get what I mean? So expressive lengthening, that's another term that I've learned. And then again, another random quotation I found, what's good for privacy is less good for history. And that to me just resonates with the whole visible teamwork aspect of work, which is all the conversations that you have and all the documents you create, everything, if you record it, it's great because it's that visible teamwork. You can use it later. It's a history of your team. But it's not great for privacy because you're keeping all these things stored somewhere that at some point, who knows who can access them. And again, so I like that. What's good for privacy is less good for history. Let's go for some more random things. So typing in lowercase was no longer an issue of laziness or efficiency. It became a way of indicating attitude. I find that, I don't know about you, I cannot not use capitals at the beginning of a sentence. And when I do it, I feel really naughty. And then when I type in Spanish, of course, if I'm typing on my, well, actually on the phone as well, but on my computer, I have an English keyboard and I have to go and change it to be Spanish. And sometimes when I'm sending messages on something like WhatsApp, if I don't put the accents on the words, I also feel a bit like, wow, I shouldn't be doing that. I'm quite a rebel. Some people won't even notice they're doing it. It really, how we write is so much a reflection of who we are or what our values are or our hang-ups in this case. And then there's here's a longer chunk, which, I don't know, what do you make of it? So, love doesn't come from a list of rules. It emerges from the spaces between us, when we pay attention to each other and care about the effect that we have on each other. When we learn to write in ways that communicate our tone of voice, not just our mastery of rules. We learn to see writing not as a way of asserting our intellectual superiority, but as a way of listening to each other better. Wow, as a writer, I'm blown away by that. I mean, this could go in the personal bit, but I'll bring it in here. So at the moment, I'm working with an editor, and it's really nice to give my work to someone who, he only knows me from the podcast. We've talked a couple of times, of course. And he's picked up, this is working on All the World's a Workplace. He's picked up on sometimes when I have one-liners, which are very random and very me. And he's asked me to note that and do more of that. And I love it because he's helping me develop my own style rather than try to converge me into, hey, this is how a business book should be written. It's actually, he's pulling me out a lot more. And as a writer, I find that really refreshing. I think that for those of us who like to express ourselves in writing, this can be quite playful and can really add to our sense of enjoyment if we use it for work as well. And for those who think that they can't write, in inverted commas, I think it's also a license to just loosen up the writing a little bit more. It is true, and even I am so pedantic, and I still notice if there's a spelling mistake or something, or a grammar mistake, I just notice it immediately. I don't judge because it's just a spelling mistake or whatever, but I notice it, and there's lots of people like me. So it's difficult because you're still operating in a place where rules and spelling rules and grammar rules still matter. However, I find this quite liberating that it's really not about writing like someone says you should, but finding your own way of writing. And we're coming to the end, but I like this one very much. Language is humanity's most spectacular open source project. It's true, isn't it? It's wonderful. And Shakespeare made lots of words up, and so did Lewis Carroll, who was amazing. And I wish that we could do more of that. I've made up a word. Roberta picked up on it, memoiresque. It's not a very out there word, but it's, I hope it sticks. Meanwhile, two more. One, I couldn't skip it, and this could be a bit controversial. The author says, that's why I've avoided referring to things that aren't online as real life. The internet has become real life. Oh, how that resonates with me. I even have a cartoon of a person with a computer on their face saying, this is real life. There is real life online. It's not in person or in the flesh, or I don't know how you want to say it. But I think that in real life, as in offline, comes from when we were in forums, going back to this anonymity I was talking about earlier, when in forums, we weren't fully there. We weren't fully there in person, or we were even fully there in identity. But now that the internet is just another medium where we can connect with other people and be ourselves, I think that to say that in person is in real life, for me, negates the medium. But I suppose it's a shortcut, There was a quote earlier here about shortcuts. Shortcuts are for ideas that we've overlearned. Maybe. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed that. I really recommend the book. It's very easy to read, Because Internet, Understanding How Language is Changing by Gretchen McCulloch. I think that's how you pronounce it. Let me know what you thought. Any challenges here, any reflections, any pushbacks, always very welcome. Pilar at virtualnotdistant.com. And again, if you have any books to recommend, do let me know, just as Roberta Sawatzky did, because she messaged me and said, hey, you're back. Yay, hurrah. She likes the format very much as another avid reader. She's also got some recommendations. But before I give you her recommendations, I've actually started reading Roberta's second memoir called Between Here and Where, Embracing Life's Transitions. And I am loving the storytelling. I mean, Roberta says she is a natural storyteller. I am not a storyteller. I'm more of an ideas communicator. So I really appreciate the fact that Roberta's writing has immersed me in her family life. I'm only like a third through, but I can see that family, and I don't know, I just have these images of sofas for some reason, Roberta. I have an image of your family and armchairs and sofas. I don't know. Check it out, Between Here and Where, Embracing Life's Transitions by Roberta Sawatzky. So the books she's recommending, I will just read straight off her message. The first is a business leadership book called It's Not Magic, The Ordinary Skills of Exceptional Leaders by John Amaechi. It's well written, practical, research-based, and comes from his years in leadership and teaching. Because it is people-focused, his insights and guidance apply to any work context, virtual or face-to-face. The second book is a fiction called No Two Persons by Erica Bauermeister, probably one of the best I have read in a long time. The book presents stories from the perspective of different people who have intersected with a fictional book, and how the book influenced and impacted their lives. It brought forth so many emotions as I read through it, and served as a great reminder that as authors, yikes, still feels strange to say that, we need to be reminded that our words have the power to influence in ways we may never know. Good, so No Two Persons is the fiction, and It's Not Magic is the leadership nonfiction book. Thank you, Roberta. That is wonderful. Yeah. When will you call yourself a writer? Yeah, it's funny, eh? Identity, professions, what we think we can call ourselves, what we can't. I mean, yeah, full conversation. Right, before we go into some of my personal updates, which I've kept short because, to be honest, only a week has gone past as opposed to a whole year from the last episode, I've got a fiction one that I've just finished reading that I'd like to recommend. It's called Home Stretch by Graham Norton, and it won't be for everybody. But what I like about the book is it creates this whole sense of community. It's a little bit, I won't say it's difficult emotionally, but the emotions are very strong. And to be honest, something happens right at the beginning of the book, which affects a whole village, lots of families. So it could be, depending on where you are emotionally, it could be a difficult read, but I loved it. I love how he creates communities with really full-on characters, and not much happens. Like, I'm a real mystery and crime police procedural reader. But here, it doesn't matter. There's not adventure. I mean, lots of things happen, but it's more normal in inverted commas, although what these characters do is not something that I've gone through at all. But again, there's that sense of normality and just thinking things that can happen to ordinary people. And I think this is about the third or fourth book I've read of Graham Norton's, who is a TV personality and an actor in the UK. And his TV persona is completely hidden from his books. His TV persona is very loud, very camp, very in your face, very funny and witty. None of that. You cannot hear this man's voice through his books, which I think is such a talent. So again, maybe in nonfiction, reflection time, maybe in nonfiction, we want to bring more of ourselves to the book and our voice. But in fiction, I think the real talent lies in disappearing behind the book so that you, the author, are not there. Right, now for part 2, and I'm keeping the edits very light on this, so if there's any background noises or anything, forgive me. What I have to say is that Wednesday is a strange day, and this is when I'm recording this, because now on Wednesdays, for the rest of this year, and I did this through most of the summer, I teach Pilates at 7:45 in the evening. Now, I am someone who has, through habits, I've changed my dinner habits, mainly because I'm married to a Dutch man who used to have dinner a lot earlier than I did, but also who works usually throughout the day. And so when he arrives at like 6 or 6:30 in the evening, he's hungry. So we've pulled our dinner time earlier, and also because it's just better for us. We've noticed that going to bed with a not full stomach is a lot better for you than to have later dinner. So I am used to, at 7:45, I'm usually either sitting down for dinner or have finished it. So to have to teach a class at that time is really going against my habits. But the worst thing is that I'm waiting the whole day for it. It's the highlight of the Wednesday. I'm not out and doing another job for the day. No, I'm probably at home working, writing, or other non-being out there things. And I used to do a lot more exercise, but I injured my knee in June. I'm being very careful and not overdoing it again, because that's where the injury came from. So it means I wait a lot of the day to pass. I book myself into swimming just before I go to do the class so that I have less waiting time. But that's why I'm here on a Wednesday. Anyway, The interview with John Amaechi that I talked about last week on the Creative Penn podcast is out now. It's episode 831. And in it, I talk about, and this is the title of the episode, how to pivot careers, co-write books, and stay connected as a remote creative. I talk about all of that. I talk a lot. If you listen out, you'll see how Joanna has to interrupt me twice. Because I just kept on going. As you can see, I can talk on my own for ages. Yeah, I listened back and I quite enjoyed it. I sound a little bit like a motivational speaker sometimes, which is not me. But I reflect a lot when I'm talking to someone. And as you know, that's why I'm here. I love talking behind the microphone. It brings up a lot of insight. So I learned a few things about myself during that conversation. And then another random update, just something I learned this week. So as I was saying earlier, yes, teaching Pilates, great. But attending Pilates classes, I absolutely love. I'm still doing that, not just to keep the practice going, of course, but also to remind myself of what it's like to be on the other side. And usually it's about remembering the things you need as a student. But sometimes I also find with Pilates, I just do the class. And during the class, it's almost like I'm getting nothing from the students or from the other practitioners. And yesterday in particular, being the person receiving the class, of course I'm not getting anything from the students because the students are completely in their own minds. They're completely in their own bodies and they're just listening, adjusting their body and following you and listening to their own bodies. So it helped me just to be, I would say at peace, but it's too big a word to be, but let's just say that to be okay with just the class happening. Yeah, every now and then if I make a joke, some people laugh, few. And every now and then when I say, is everyone all right? Some people reply, few as well. But actually, I think it's just reminded me that as long as people are smiling when they leave the class, which luckily for most of my sessions they have, not all of them, because, I just graduated recently and also not everyone's going to like all classes. But for the most part, people are enjoying them. And so that's okay. So again, especially if you're in a position where you either teach or consult or present, I think that, well, you probably know the importance of just being on the other side often to remind yourself of what it's like, but also to learn how to adjust your own practice around that. And finally, I just thought I'd share how I'm working on these episodes because it's a little bit of a tech workflow. So I make my notes on the Kindle. I still read most of my books on the Kindle. So I'll make notes as I go along. And then when I finish a book, I export what's called a notebook, which is just the highlights and the notes I've made. And I export that as a PDF. I send it to my email, and from there I upload it to Dropbox, which is where I have my Kindle Notes folder. And so what I'm doing at the moment, I'm going through there, I'm looking at the books I have, I choose a book, I download it on my iPad, and then I make notes on it with my pen, with my iPad pen, and I mark the notes I want to highlight. So again, if you are a reader on Kindle, and I don't know, maybe, did you know that you can export your notebook? I think it's quite fun. Right, so that is it for today. My Audacity is hidden. Audacity is where I record my voice onto. It's hidden behind my Trello card. So I don't know how long I've been going on for. But yes, thank you so much for listening. If you have anything to say, I would love to hear from you. Pilar at virtualnotdistant.com. If you have any book recommendations for our other listeners, welcome. We, of course, focus here still on 21st century work life, but fiction is very welcome because a lot of people who read nonfiction also read fiction, and sometimes it's just nice to hear about a book. Thank you very much for listening.